This is Kate coming to you from after I'm editing, and I just wanted to say that I went absolutely rogue in the first half of this podcast. So if you wanted to skip my journey for my own relationship with my body, then skip to about like 30 minutes, and then I'll start talking about obedience and subservience and thinness and how that applies to like beauty standards and submission and all the kind of stuff that the meat of the podcast was supposed to be about. But if you wanted to listen to my journey with my own body image and my own journey with eating disorders and all that kind of stuff, you can listen to the entire podcast. But I just mentioned eating disorders, so trigger warning: for the first half of this podcast I will be talking about eating disorders. So again, if you wanted to hear the full story, just keep listening, and if you wanted to skip to the part about thinness and obedience, then I would skip to about 30 minutes. Welcome back. This is episode 3 of Do Less, Fall Behind. I'm Kate, and thank you so much for joining me for another week of yapping. Woohoo! So I did actually want to put a little bit more structure on this episode, because I know the last 2 episodes I was just kind of just ping pong balling and just bouncing back and forth, and I didn't really have very much structure. And please don't expect anything like very well planned out or thought out or very structured, but I have a few more kind of like points, and I have a few more like notes and stuff than I had the last time, so I feel a little bit more prepared, and I feel a little bit more like I have some sort of direction, or I have some sort of path in which I should talk and walk. But please don't expect too much, because I'm probably gonna go off the rails. I'm probably gonna go off-roading. Okay, so if you follow me on Instagram, if you are on my newsletter, email list, whatever, you will know that I posted up a link to give me podcast suggestions or questions if you had any questions that you wanted me to answer, or if you like just wanted me to talk about something or whatever. And I got loads of suggestions, and thank you so much for all your suggestions, and I am definitely going to get around to answering all of them. But this week I actually wanted to talk about one that I felt particularly strong about, because I think it's really relevant to where we are as a culture today, and for women, and the pressure to be thin, and this new trend coming out of thinness and Pilates and ozempic and all that shit. And I think the question was asking me how to build a better relationship, how I built confidence in my body and my relationship with my body, and building better esteem and a better body image. And I have so much to say on that, so I'm gonna say it. So I have actually taken notes this week, so I might actually be able to talk a little bit better in between my coffee burps. But the first thing I'm gonna say when it comes to body image, when it comes to confidence, is I have had, not currently, the relationship I have with my body now is the best that it's ever been in my whole life, ever. And it's been really, really good for the past like 5 years. And I put that down to gaining weight and going to the gym and building muscle, but we will talk about that more a little bit later on. But my past relationship with my body is so incredibly complicated. I suffered trauma from when I was a teenager, and it made me hate my body, and I blamed my body. And my body has, because of how my body looks, my body has caused me a lot of stress, and I blamed my body a lot for the attention that it received. Even if I was trying really, really hard to hide it, or if I was trying really, really hard to not bring that sort of attention to myself, it would come inevitably. And so I actually hated my body for a really long time. And then also, just to keep in mind, so that I am born in 1991. So when I was 16, it was 2000 and I can't do maths. 2005, 2007, some shit, I don't know, around then. And that was like peak time of all of those magazines that were like ripping into women being fat and ripping into women who had completely normal, actually quite thin bodies, but the media was just tearing them down, calling them fat, calling them ugly, calling them beasts, and trying to like highlight every single inch of their body and like tell them what was wrong with themselves. And like eating disorders were huge, and like the Olsen twins and Nicole Richie, Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan. And I grew up, my formative years of becoming very aware of my body, becoming very aware of my sexuality, becoming very aware of men paying attention to me, and becoming very aware of how I felt about that, and how it made me feel like I was in a lot of danger. They were all mashed in together, and all of my formative years and all of my formative years of becoming aware of my body and how I relate to my body was all in that era of like eating disorders and being very skinny and everyone calling each other fat, and seeing women that were way skinnier than me being torn apart by the media for like having a tiny bit of cellulite when they sat down or something. And that all got like really deeply ingrained in my body. And I won't go into too much detail because I tried to record this podcast earlier, but I ended up talking for an hour about my relationship with my body and how being in the yoga industry for over 10 years kind of fucked up my relationship with my body and my relationship to food. And if anyone is interested in that, I can post it as like a separate thing, or I can kind of include the cliff notes in this episode. But I had really, really fucked up relationship with my body when I was a teenager. And I was going to say disordered eating, but I think that would be putting it very lightly. I had absolute eating disorders for sure when I was a teenager. And all I wanted to do was be skinny. All I wanted to do was like disappear, like literally disappear. And then I also hated my body because it got me in trouble and it landed me in certain situations with certain people, and my body was blamed for that, and I was blamed for that. So I hated my body. I blamed my body. My body was not my friend. I did not have a good relationship with my body at all. And then I got pregnant when I was 20, and that was the first time ever that I cared about anything except like how skinny I was. And that was the first time that I ever let myself look after myself. That was the first time in my life I ever remember actually giving a fuck about myself, was when I was pregnant, because I wasn't just giving a fuck about myself. I was giving a fuck about the baby that was in my tummy. And that baby in my tummy was so much more important to me than being perceived as being skinny. And that took a lot of work. It wasn't easy. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm pregnant, therefore all of my past conditioning has just gone out the window. It was a lot of work. It was so much work. I was really not well when I got pregnant, but I will always say that was like the turning point in my life completely. I have like two lives in my brain. I have two lives. I have like before I had my child and then after I had my child. And there's a really clear kind of like next chapter of pregnancy and having my son, and then like before that it was just a different life. And my ass is getting numb from sitting here for so long. I have to try and move myself 1 sec. But anyway, so when I got pregnant, that was the very, very, very first time that I kind of stopped caring about being skinny, and I stopped caring about what I was eating. And I actually was like intentionally trying to eat more, and I was intentionally trying to make sure that I was eating enough to make sure my baby was okay. And my baby was fine. He was super healthy, he was quite big, a very, very tall baby. So my pregnancy wasn't easy. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm not gonna go into a whole pregnancy podcast now, but my pregnancy was not easy at all. The delivery was not easy, but he came out fine. He's healthy and I was fine. And then after that, my relationship with my body started to kind of get a bit shit again, because it was easy to prioritize my health, and it was easy to kind of step away from trying to be skinny when I had a literal human to look after who was inside my body. But he wasn't inside my body anymore. He was outside my body now. And I could kind of, I kind of like slipped back into old habits of like wanting to be very skinny and like forcing myself to do loads of exercise and all that kind of stuff. And then when my son was really, really young, I started doing yoga. That was like the introduction to looking after myself and trying to better my mental health and trying to improve my relationship with myself so that I could be a really good mum, because again, it wasn't about me anymore. I couldn't just like let myself slip into self-destruction the way that I had when I was a teenager, where nothing fucking mattered. Like nothing mattered at all when I was a teenager. I was just like, how is the quickest way for me to die without actually like killing myself? That's all I was interested in. And anyway, blah, 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 blah. I just wanted to die. I did not want to be alive, and not interested in in existing in any way, shape or form. But what was I saying? Oh yeah. And then I had my son, and because I had my son, I was like, okay, well, I need to be alive and I need to stick around and I can't just self-destruct, and I want to be a really good mom and I want to be around for my son. And so that gave me the motivation or the reason to kind of look after myself and to get my mental health in order and to get my health in general in order when my son was a teeny weeny little baby. So I started doing loads of yoga, loads of therapy, and like sorted myself out, and ended up, I'm still in the yoga world. I'm still teaching yoga. I still teach yoga. I still practice yoga, but I'm really not in the like vortex anymore. For like a solid decade, I was in the vortex and I was doing lots of trainings, doing lots of different certificates, you know, doing all these different kind of qualifications and stuff, and lots of different groups, lots of different modalities, and blah 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 blah. And probably I don't even know how much money I've spent on yoga trainings, but I definitely haven't earned that money back by being a teacher. But anyway, I love teaching yoga, and it really I hate when people say this, but like it's really not about the money, because if I was teaching yoga purely for the money, I would have stopped a long time ago. But anyway, for like the first 10 years of when I entered into the yoga world, I was sucked into the vortex. And because I had come from having such a negative relationship with my body and such a bad body image, being in the yoga world it can be quite toxic. Being in the healing world, being in that like wellness industry or whatever, it can be very, very, very toxic. And I found that the corners of the wellness industry that I found myself in gave me permission to have eating disorders, but like disguised as holistic or disguised as being really healthy. So for example, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh fuck's sake when I say this, but if you have ever heard of Freely the Banana Girl, or if you've ever heard of like frugivore or fruitarian or raw till 4 or raw vegan or whatever, you are owed compensation if you have ever fallen into the trap of listening to fucking Freely the Banana Girl. But so Freely the Banana Girl, if anyone doesn't know, she's this Australian fucking bitch, and all she does is eat bananas and talk shit about people, and she rips into celebrities and just like calls everyone fat and tells them they just need to eat bananas and that will sort out all their problems. Don't listen to crazy banana people on the internet, just fucking don't. But Freely the Banana Girl and creators like her got a hold of me when I was in my early 20s, when I was still suffering from disordered eating and I still hadn't fully healed my relationship to myself, and I was still kind of falling into that trap of like really wanting to be thin, wanting to be skinny, and wanting to be just a little teeny weeny and fuck that shit basically. But yeah, so if you know who Freely is, I saw her on TikTok actually. She's still going. It's been probably 11 years since I used to watch her content on YouTube. It's like I was in my early 20s. Like it's been 11 years since I was aware of her and kind of got sucked up in her vortex. She's still fucking going. She's still going with the same shit. She's still going. I got sucked into that kind of world for a long time, being someone who was doing a lot of Bikram, and there's like this weird undercurrent in some of the Bikram classes that I had been to, and the way Bikram himself even teaches, where he's quite fat shamey, and also he's a fucking predator, so there's that. But in Bikram classes, they will kind of insinuate being skinny is better and you can fit better into the poses and there's less stuff in the way if you're skinny and like sweat more and like anyway, blah blah. The healing world, the yoga world, the wellness world, whatever, can be very, very, very toxic. And I just want to say another fucking thing. A lot of those fruit people who used to only eat fruit are now carnivores who only eat fucking meat, which proves my point that they just have eating disorders. They don't necessarily care about their health. They just have eating disorders. If you are someone who only ate fruit and then you read an article or you listened to fucking Jordan Peterson or something and now you only eat beef, there's something wrong. Anyway, so I got sucked up into the world of like veganism and under the guise of like being healthy and under this illusion or under this lie that I actually gave a fuck about my health. It was just an excuse to like cut out huge portions of food and restrict my food massively so that I could be skinny. But it was like, no, I'm just vegan. I'm just raw vegan. Actually, I don't eat cooked food anymore, but it's really fucking healthy. It's really fucking healthy. No, it isn't. No, it fucking isn't. It fucked me up. Like, it was not healthy. It really fucked me up. And anyway, so I had really bad body image, and being in the wellness world and being in the yoga world kind of gave me these like weird permission slips to perpetuate my eating disorders from when I was a teenager and to kind of keep them alive, but like under the illusion of like being really healthy. But anyway, I ended up, because I was in the yoga world as well, I was very, very, very skinny. I was very, very flexible, and I ended up hurting myself a couple of times really, really badly from being so fucking flexible. I was like a wet piece of spaghetti, but I had no structure and I had no support from any muscle mass. I had really low muscle mass, because I was so skinny and because I was so flexible, I just bending and stretching into oblivion without anything there to keep me safe and anything there to keep me supported. So I ended up hurting myself one time really fucking badly in one of my yoga trainings. One of my teachers told me to do like a yoga pose, and then he decided that my back wasn't flat enough. I was sitting on the ground with my legs really wide, grabbed my feet and went forward into like a pancake, so I was completely flat. He decided that I wasn't flat enough, so he either stood on me or he kneeled down on my back. I obviously couldn't see because I was like face down. He put this is a grown man, put his entire body weight on my back, and I didn't go down any flatter. He didn't flatten my spine. He did nothing except tear my fucking piriformis when he stood on me. My hips, whatever way my hips moved to try and accommodate this grown ass fucking man who was standing on my back, whatever way my hips moved, twisted my pelvis or something. I don't know what happened. My feet like rotated outwards to try and accommodate this giant man, and I felt the muscle in my left bum cheek rip. So my piriformis muscle, which is like a little muscle in between some of the bigger muscles in your bum, that completely ripped. And I had sciatica for about 3 or 4 years. Really, really, really bad sciatica for 3 or 4 years. This grown man trying to show off that his student was so fucking flexible and he was so cool and he could like stand on me, broke my body because he wanted to feed his ego. Anyway, obviously that wasn't my fault. He stood on me. Like, I didn't do that. I didn't want that. I didn't decide that. But I had other injuries that I did do myself because I was bending and bending and bending and bending and bending, and I didn't have muscle to support myself. So of course I'm gonna hurt. Like, I'm gonna get hurt. So anyway, I had sciatica because of that injury. I had sciatica for years that I couldn't sit down for very long. I couldn't drive for very long. It was like this fucking... It was awful. It was awful. It was really depressing as well because it was like this entity that lived in my bum cheek that would like dribble down into my knee and that would sometimes dribble down into my ankle, and it was horrible. I cannot explain. I know people who have sciatica. I work with people who have sciatica, and oh my god, it is awful. It is awful. And I was stretching my body thinking that stretching and doing more yoga and constantly like working into the muscle and like stretching it out was going to fix it, and I was just keeping it open and it wouldn't heal because I kept stretching it, and I kept thinking that like I'm healing it, I'm doing yoga, I'm like nourishing my body, and that was the worst thing that I could have done for it. And the only time I actually fixed it was when I started lifting weights and I started actually building up the muscles in my bum and intentionally like building up the muscles in my bum to try and get bigger. So in 2020, I decided that I was way too skinny and that I still had like remnants of this conditioning that I had carried with me for my whole fucking life to be skinny, and this need to be thin, and just this, oh God, just the amount of energy that I have spent in my life from my teenage years into my 20s, the amount of energy that I have spent, the amount of time that I've spent, the amount of brain space that has been taken up with this desire to be fucking skinny. If I had thought of anything else, if I had used that time for literally anything else, I probably would be like a millionaire. I'm not joking. But anyway, that's not what I did. I prioritized being skinny. Thank God. And I was never even that skinny anyway. But I actually was quite skinny because I'm 5'8", so I am pretty tall. But anyway, in 2020, I decided that I needed to start building muscle and I needed to start getting like fitter, and I wanted to get a little bit bigger and I wanted to gain weight, and I was too flexible and I needed to like add some support to my body to accommodate my flexibility, and I needed to increase my muscle mass. And so that's what I did. I started, and I was always in the gym. I'm not like new to the gym. Even when I was doing loads of yoga, I still went to the gym like 3 days a week. But I used to go to the gym and it would be like go on the treadmill and then do some dumbbells and then maybe do this machine and do that machine, and just kind of walk around without a plan and not really know what I was doing. And every time I went to the gym, it was like a little bit of cardio and then like a random full body something that did nothing really, like. And I fell into that trap of like, I don't want to lift weights because I don't want to be a big giant man, and I don't want to be bulky, and I want to be tiny and skinny, and I don't want to be big. And little did I know how much fucking effort it would take to actually get bulky and to actually get really big. It doesn't happen by accident. You cannot accidentally make yourself really big or really muscly. Like, that is intentional, and that takes so much time and energy and effort and food and calories, and oh God, it's really hard to like actually make yourself bulky by accident, even on purpose. It's really hard to actually make yourself bulky on purpose. Because I did it. But anyway, so in 2020, I hired a trainer. She was my first trainer, Emma. And she started me on like my bulk journey, and I looked at her in the gym and I was like, I love her. Like, her body, I was just looking at her body, not in a pervy way, just in an admiration way of like, I want to look like that, but like on me, you know, like my version of whatever that looks like. Obviously I can never look like someone else's body, but my body I could be that muscly and whatever that would look like on my body. And also I just want to say, for the gym girlies, I'm a tall gym girly. Most gym people who you see online are like 5'3", 5'4". It's so much easier for short people to like fill themselves out than it is for tall people. I'm just going to say that. So if you are a tall gym girly and you're trying to like build big legs or like build a big bum or build big hips or build big shoulders or whatever, it's going to take a little bit longer for you to fill yourself out because you're taller and your muscles are longer. I'm just going to say that. Okay. Anyway, so don't compare yourself to people who you see in the gym. Most people who have that like gym body are smaller, like height. And most people who are online, who are gym influencers, are smaller in height. So don't compare yourself to like a 5'3" or a 5'4" person. If you are 5'8", the exercises are going to look different. Your form is going to look completely different because your legs are longer, your torso is longer, your arms are longer. Your form is going to look a little bit different. And it might take a little bit longer for you to like actually fill yourself out. Anyway, just going to put that in there for any tall gym girlies. So I hired Emma because I saw her in the gym and I was like obsessed. And I just went up to her and said, are you a trainer? And she said, yeah. And I said, can I hire you, please? And she said, of course. And then she started me off. And it was actually really great because the most valuable thing that I got from Emma was learning form. She taught me how to deadlift properly. She taught me how to do RDLs properly. She taught me how to squat. She taught me how to do hip thrusts. And that was fucking amazing. And then COVID hit, so the gyms all closed for a while and stuff, but I was still working out at home. And when I first started my journey to try and gain weight, the first time I took a photo of myself, I was 59 kilos, but I had already actually gained a couple of kilos. When I first started off in the gym, I probably was about 56 kilos, and maybe I gained a couple of kilos before I took the first photo. So let's just say like 56 kilos I started at. Over the next 3 years, from 2020 to 2023, I gained over 20 kilos of muscle nearly 30 kilos actually, because I went from like 56 to like 84, 85. So almost 30 kilos of muscle and fat. I will say I did gain fat and I'm not mad about it. It's fucking delicious. And I was always really scared of gaining fat. And being someone who was not brought up, nobody brought me up to like prioritize being skinny or to like celebrate being skinny or to like always glamorize being skinny. But that seeped into my subconscious from being just a woman in a certain era and stuff, and just like the need to be thin and retraining my brain and actually kind of like feeding myself properly and wanting to actually see the scale go up was such a mental game. It was such a physical game as well, because it's like, it's so hard. It was so hard for me to do that. And it was really hard for me to, okay, I haven't gained any weight this last month. I'm going to have to up my calories. And coming from someone who had disordered eating and who had this like, need to be thin and this fear of gaining weight, like that was really mental. And I did it, and it fully healed my relationship with myself. The process of intentionally gaining weight and the process of actually feeding myself and the process of like wanting my body to get bigger and the process of celebrating the fact that I was lifting heavier and that I was gaining weight, because it meant that I was getting stronger. And if I was gaining weight and if I was lifting heavier, then I was building muscle. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to build muscle. And I'll throw in some photos of when I started lifting weights and then when I got quite big, and just to show you the difference of my body, because sometimes I will forget how much my body actually changed over the last couple of years, and I'll forget how much work I actually put into it and how proud of myself I am for being able to do that. But it healed that thing in my brain that was telling me for most of my life that I needed to be thin and that I needed to be skinny and that I was a fat bitch and that I would be happier if I was skinny. It healed that part of my brain, and that had been really, really, really loud for most of my life. And my life got significantly better when I stopped prioritizing being skinny. The amount of brain space that I cleared up when I actually just let myself eat, and I actually just let myself when I just actually let myself be hungry and then feed myself, like listen to my body. My body is telling me that I'm hungry. I'm not going to override my body's need. And again, we spoke about this in one of the other podcasts where it's like your body is telling you something. And if you don't listen to your body, you're basically telling your body like you don't matter. Your body is telling you that you're hungry and you're going to say no. You're going to hear your body crying out and sending you the signals. Your body can't actually talk to you. Your stomach isn't going to say, hey, feed me, but it's going to make those gurgly noises and it's going to send you those sensations and that little pain of like being hungry. That is your body talking to you. That is your body communicating to you. And I had trained my body for so long to ignore that. I trained my mind to ignore my body signaling to me that it was hungry. And the healing that happened in the gym for me when I actually just let myself eat and I started listening to my body. My body's hungry. I'm going to feed it. My body matters. My stomach matters. My hunger matters. I'm going to feed my body when it says that it's hungry. But anyway, and again, I know I said this earlier, but the amount of brain space that was cleared up, and the amount of time and energy that I was able to spend thinking about other things, starting a business, doing all of my somatic training, a lot of therapy I did over those couple of years as well, and just to actually let myself live and let myself enjoy eating and going out and not worry about the calories and not feel any sort of guilt. And I can eat anything now and not feel guilty. So I could eat like 10 cheeseburgers and not feel guilty. I might feel sick and I might not feel like really healthy, but I won't feel guilt. I will not feel guilt. I could eat 10 Christmas dinners, 10 slices of cake and fucking 20 million ice creams, and I will probably feel sick. But one thing I will not feel is guilt. I will not feel guilt for eating anything. I want nothing will make me feel guilty. And I used to feel guilt for eating everything up until like 2019, 2020. And then I started healing that. So that was a really fucking long time in my life was spent. Like nearly 20 years was spent feeling guilty for fucking feeding myself. But anyway, thank God that's in the past. But I just want to say that the recent trend that's happening around like being skinny And the recent trend that's happening with just trying to get women to feel skinny and to try and get women to be skinny is really fucking alarming. And I know trends come and go, and I know that every couple of years the beauty standard changes, and every couple of years the body trends change, because they're trying to endlessly convince us to like change ourselves and to never feel happy with ourselves, so that we're constantly stuck in this loop of like fixing ourselves or chasing this thing or buying these products that have been sold and promised to us as like the answer, the thing. And it's like, well, how come the thing keeps fucking changing? You said this was the thing, and now this is the thing. And even in skincare, hyaluronic acid was like the thing, and then it was like vitamin C, and now it's like all of these peptides, and now it's like niacinamide and blah blah blah. It's always just, there's always a fucking thing that we don't have, that we need. And there's no thing. There's no fucking thing. And even a couple of years ago, the Kim Kardashian body was being pushed on us as like, this is the ideal, being like an hourglass figure. I have that body naturally. I have huge tits, I have a small waist, and I have a heavier like bottom half, like my hips are really wide, and then I made my bum big in the gym and I made my legs big or whatever. But so I have that body naturally, and I'm gonna tell you something. When I was a teenager, that body was fucking disgusting. I was gross. I was ugly when I was a teenager. My body shape was vile when I was a teenager, just to let you know. And all I wanted to be was like straight up and down Nicole Richie, Lindsay Lohan, Olsen twins, whatever. I just wanted to be straight up and down, no shape, no curves, no nothing. And then to see that go out of fashion, and then to see like the Kim K hourglass shape come in, and all of a sudden I'm like, the beauty standard, what the fuck? And my body is being like celebrated, and my body is being like, people are chasing, people are going to the gym to build up their shoulders and to like to have that X shape where your shoulders are wide, your waist is tiny, and then your like lower half is like a bit chunkier, and people are like doing all these exercises to like create that X shape. And I'm like, that's crazy. I have that shape. I've had that shape my entire life, and I have been running away from it. I have been trying to like actively make it disappear and make it invisible and get rid of all of my gorgeous curves and all of my like lumps and bumps and all the things that I love now, not because it was a beauty standard. I'm out of fashion again, guys. I'm ugly again, don't worry. But not because it was a beauty standard, but because I worked really, really hard, like mentally and physically, to actually love my body and to actually like feed my body and give my body what it needs, instead of like fighting against my body and like forcing it to be tiny. I'm not a super skinny person, and in order for me to stay really skinny required me to like starve myself and ignore my body and to not listen to my body. And we don't do that in this house anymore. We're not doing that in this house anymore. And if you are doing that, and if you are someone who is stuck in those loops of constantly feeling like you need to be tiny and constantly feeling like you need to be skinny, and like falling into the trap of like believing these fucking marketing trends and TikTok trends of like Pilates princess and the skinny jeans and the low-waisted jeans, and you kind of have your muffin top hanging over the jeans, like just block all of that shit. Like if you see something online that makes you question your beauty, or that makes you question how you feel about your body, not interested, three little dots in the corner, press those dots. I'm not fucking interested. I don't want to fucking see this. I'm not gonna give into this shit. I'm gonna go eat pizza. But I wanted to talk about the beauty trends that's happening with the skinniness, and how thinness, when a society is obsessed with thinness, there's this weird illusion that happens where we think that for whatever reason, I don't know why, we're like sold this idea that like being thin is like really healthy, or forcing yourself to be thin if you're not naturally thin is really fucking healthy. Give me one example of when society, or when our governments or our healthcare systems have ever prioritized women's health. Crickets? Do I hear crickets? I'm waiting. I can't think of a single example of when women's health is prioritized. Why do we assume that the trend of women being thin has anything to do with them wanting us to be healthy? It doesn't have anything to do with health. It doesn't have anything to do with beauty. And if you're a woman you have to fight to be taken seriously in a doctor's. And I know there are really, really good doctors out there who take women seriously, but I don't know the statistics, but I'm just going to say 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 women who go to the doctor with genuine concerns and symptoms will just be put on the pill, or just be given a pregnancy test, or just told to lose weight and completely dismissed. And women die, like literally women die because doctors dismiss their symptoms or just tell them to lose weight. But anyway, a country who is obsessed, or a society that is obsessed with thinness, is not interested in the woman's beauty or the woman's health. They are interested in control, submission, and obedience. Okay. So when we see these trends rising, the Pilates princess, the Pilates body, that took over from strength training. So a couple of years ago, everyone's in the gym, everyone's getting their big Kim K booty, everyone's getting their tiny little waist. Women are getting stronger. Okay. And who gets intimidated by this? Who gets intimidated when women get really strong, and when women start getting bigger, and when women start getting strength and stamina, and like, God forbid, a muscle or two? Who gets intimidated by that? Who gets intimidated by that? The men in charge of the beauty industry get intimidated by that, because they've already sold us everything that we need to go to the gym. And now they're going to sell us more things to undo all the work that we did in the gym to make ourselves skinnier. So if we made ourselves big and muscly and bulky in the gym, now we're being pushed this idea of being tiny and skinny and like have long, lean muscles instead of thick, juicy muscles. So to go from being a gym girly to being like a skinny Pilates girly, we're going to have to buy all new stuff. If we want to keep up with our favorite influencers or fitness influencers or whatever. You can do Pilates at home for free. I do Pilates. I like Pilates. I'm not talking shit about Pilates. I'm just talking about this like force feeding this trend of this like pink Pilates princess down our fucking throats. And obviously you need like a $60 Stanley Cup. Obviously you need a matching like gym set from Alo fucking Yoga for 200 quid. Obviously you need to go to like the reformer classes. I had a look just before I was recording this. I had a look to see how much Pilates classes were in Ireland. You can go to a Pilates class for like €25. There's ones that are like €35 for like a drop-in class. Are you fucking crazy? Like, no, I'm not doing that. You can do it for free, by the way. But I also just wanted to say that there's nothing wrong with Pilates. Pilates was actually invented for people who have disabilities and people who like lost their limbs during war and stuff. So it is supposed to be very accessible, but not in the way that it's taught these days. I'm sure if you went to any sort of Pilates class in like a major city that was full of Pilates princesses and it was €35 class, I'm sure it's not accessible for people who have disabilities and for people who are missing limbs. I'm sure it's going to be a room full of gorgeous, skinny 20-year-olds who are drinking from Stanley Cups in matching Alo Yoga sets. And again, there's nothing like inherently wrong with any of that kind of stuff. It's just if we are being forced this idea and we're trying to keep up with this, that's what's wrong. That's what I think is wrong. Just this like, oh, this is really cool and pretty, and this is the hottest thing ever, and now this is, and it's constantly changing, so that we're just constantly stuck in this loop, this never-ending loop of chasing the next fucking thing. And I also think it's really interesting how all of a sudden this trend of being skinny again has come back in. With everything that's happening in America, with women's rights being taken away, reproductive rights being taken away, men are being threatened by women. Men are being threatened by women in power. Men are threatened when women take up too much space. Men are threatened when women are strong. And I'm not talking about like every single man. Please, like if the shoe doesn't fit, then don't force it onto you. Like if I'm not talking about you, I'm just talking about like men as a whole and women as a whole. Not every woman who listens to this is a Pilates princess, and they're not going to be offended when I just like mention women. So I'm not talking about all men, every single man. I'm talking about like Elon Musk and Donald fucking Trump. So I'm definitely not talking about you if you're a man and you're listening to this. Okay. So just use discernment and just use your brain. And it's just exhausting to constantly have to add like disclaimers and stuff the whole time. So just, if I'm not talking about you, then I'm not talking about you. You don't need to get offended if I'm not talking about you. But any hoodle. So when women get too loud, or they start taking up too much space, or they end up in positions of power, or they don't really have any interest anymore in being like a stay-at-home mom, and we get opportunities to pursue and other roles to pursue that are outside the house, this can be very, very threatening to like the status quo. And to convince women to be skinny and convince women to lose weight and convince women that that's all they need to be to be fulfilled, it keeps women very, very distracted, as I have been in my life when I was obsessed with food, when I was obsessed with calorie counting, when I was obsessed with being skinny. I had no energy. My body didn't work properly. My brain didn't work. I'm sure I've done irreversible damage to my body from what I did when I was a teenager, and in terms of like starving myself and abusing my body. But hungry women are very, very, very easy to control. Hungry women who are overly focused on their bodies, who pick themselves apart, who are obsessed with every inch of their skin, every pound of flesh. It's not that they're easy to suppress, it's that they've been tricked into suppressing themselves. They've been tricked into keeping themselves tiny and keeping themselves hungry. And so it's not even like we're being suppressed, or women are being suppressed by men withdrawing food from them or forcing starvation upon them. The women are doing it to themselves. And I'm not like blaming women for falling into any sort of trap when it comes to like body trends or pressure from society or pressure from like media or whatever. But we got to keep eating. We have got to keep eating. I just want to talk a little bit about muscles and how important it is actually to be strong, and how important muscles are, especially for women, and especially as we get older. So if you're going to the gym, I will admit, like when I first started going to the gym, some of it was to do with my health and to do with wanting to like build muscle and be stronger, but a lot of it had to do with aesthetics. I wanted to look a different way. I wanted to look differently, and I wanted a stronger body, and I wanted a different like physical aesthetic as well. So when I'm going to just read out some stuff here about muscles and about how important it is when we get older to be strong and have muscles. So we lose 5 to 8% of our lean muscle mass every 10 years after we turn 30. So after the age of 30, every decade we lose 5 to 8% of our muscle mass. And that percentage only increases once we turn 60. So we lose more than that after the ages of 60. Women over 50 need lean muscle to maintain strength, bone strength, and to stabilize our joints, which can prevent injury. Typically, the more muscle you have, the less prone you are to injury, chronic disease, and early death. So the more muscle mass you have, you're literally preventing early preventable death. Weight-bearing exercises and resistance exercises like weightlifting are particularly important for improving bone density and helping to prevent osteoporosis. I can't find the exact statistic, but I remember reading an article before about if you lift weights, as a woman, if you lift weights in your 30s and your 40s, you are preventing osteoporosis by up to like 80-something%. I can't remember the exact statistic, but also, listen to this. In one study, postmenopausal women, so women after they went into menopause, so these are women in their 50s, 60s, so in one study, postmenopausal women who participated in strength training program for just 1 year saw significant increases in their bone density in the spine, hips, and areas most affected by osteoporosis in older women. So it increased their bone density. Not only did it preserve whatever remaining bone density they had, it actually increased it. So you can literally like make your bones stronger by lifting weights. And when you get older, if you have a fall or an injury and you don't have strong bones, you can literally die. You can literally die or end up in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, compared to if you had muscle mass and if you had stronger bones, the outcome will be so much better. Listen to this. Women with low muscle mass were about 40% more likely to die from breast cancer or other health issues than women who didn't have low muscle mass. So women with low muscle mass were 40% more likely to die from breast cancer. I have another one here. Assessment of body composition and preservation of muscle mass may reduce chemotherapy toxicity and improve overall survival. So I actually read a lot about cancer survival and how it's directly linked to muscle mass. The more muscle mass you have on your body, the better the outcome of any sort of cancer treatment, chemotherapy treatments. And I'm sure there's other factors to take into account, but muscle mass is really fucking important as we get older. It's really fucking important. So this thinness that's coming out, when you lose weight, most of what we see when we see women losing weight and women getting tiny, they're not losing fat and preserving muscle, they're losing fat and muscle. So they're decreasing their overall muscle mass, and they're making themselves way more susceptible to injury when they get older. When I go to the gym, I'm not just thinking about, oh, I want to be skinny, or oh, I want to be really big, or I want to gain loads of muscles, or I want to make my legs bigger. I'm thinking about 50-year-old Kate, 60-year-old Kate, 70-year-old Kate. I still want to be able to tie my shoes. I want to be able to balance. I want to be able to walk up and down the stairs for as long as possible without being helped. I want to be able to go on holidays and like walk up and down the steps on the plane. I want to be able to like enjoy myself when I go when I retire or when I turn old. I'm not just thinking about like aesthetics, and I'm not just thinking about like, oh, I want a big bum. There's nothing wrong with that. I do want a big bum, but I'm also thinking about future Kate, and I'm also thinking about potentially getting sick, and how muscle mass is so fucking important and like really changes the prognosis and really changes the outcome of so many things as we get older. So this obsession with being fucking thin, and this obsession with worrying about how much space we're physically taking up, it will literally destroy your life. It will not only take over your brain, because when we're worried about being thin, and when we're obsessed with counting calories, and we're obsessed with focusing on our bodies, and we're picking ourselves apart, we're hungry. Your brain just doesn't work properly. And I know that from being someone who did have eating disorders, and I know that from being someone who was obsessed with being skinny. It took up so much of my brain space. This is a tactic that is used to suppress women. When women start taking up too much space, and when women start, you know, like whatever, getting loud or getting powerful or being perceived as being too loud, they will use this, make them feel like they need to be skinny, you know. And I'm not like some conspiracy theorist person, but it's just really interesting how it's all kind of lining up with the fucking Handmaid's Tale shit that's going to go on in America, or that's starting in America. A coincidence? Maybe. I do not know. But it keeps women distracted basically, and it keeps women's energies really fucking low. Because if you are obsessed with counting calories and intake and output and weighing out your food and pinching your skin and doing a BMI test every day and weighing yourself, it's like an obsession. Like it actually turns into an addiction, and it's like an addiction to something that you can't have. So like you can't have the cake, and you can't have more than 1,200 calories a day, and you can't have this and you can't have that. It turns into an addiction, and it's all you can think about. It is all you can think about. If you are constantly monitoring every calorie that you take in and put out, and every inch of your body and every pound of your flesh, every bite of your food, it is exhausting. And I know that I don't need to go into any more detail about that, but I can tell you, I cannot emphasize enough how much energy it takes to be focused on being thin if you are not naturally thin. If you are not naturally thin and you are trying to make yourself super skinny, it takes so much brain space to actually be skinny, and it takes so much energy to actually try and make yourself skinny. And I just wanted to say as well, in the 1800s, this is really interesting. You should look this up, because I've been talking for 47 minutes, so I probably will wrap it up soon. But in the 1800s, the media invented this term bicycle face to get women to stop cycling bikes, because women had picked up the habit of like, oh, it's really fun to go out on bikes, and they used to like gather together in little groups and go for cycles, and they were getting a little bit more independent because they were getting out and they were like cycling around, and they weren't home as much, and they were also getting stronger from cycling everywhere. They were building up their stamina, and God forbid they were gaining muscle. And someone felt very threatened by this. The men felt very, very threatened by this. So they invented this term called bicycle face to scare women into not cycling bikes anymore. And they basically do the same thing with us over and over and over again. Like if you go on TikTok and you see any of like the beauty trends, or the like, do you remember that thing on TikTok, that like negative cantle tilt thing? They will keep inventing these insecurities, and they will keep inventing these things so that we are constantly nitpicking at ourselves and constantly stuck in this loop of never feeling good enough and never feeling happy or fulfilled, and constantly just buying the next thing that's going to fix us, and like stuck in these loops of like insecurity. And I just want to say something as well. A secure woman who is confident and happy with herself and how she looks is a very, very, very inconvenient woman. And they don't like that. The beauty industry doesn't like that. And again, I've said it in the last podcast episode, but I'll say it again. I participate in the beauty industry. Like I have, I do my nails. Not right now. I do my hair. Not right now. I put on makeup. I do participate in some ways. I've had plastic surgery. I've had my nose done. And I had Botox in 2020 as well. I haven't had it since. So I wear makeup. I do participate in the beauty industry. So I'm not here on my like high horse telling you like, just don't indulge in the beauty industry whatsoever. That's not what I'm trying to say. But the more we indulge in these trends, the more we keep ourselves stuck in this vortex of just never fucking feeling good enough. We're making billionaire men richer by buying their products and by letting them feed us these insecurities instead of really like taking a step back and working on ourselves and just being really fucking happy with ourselves the way that we are. And again, I still indulge in the beauty industry and I still participate in the beauty industry, and I don't indulge in the diet industry anymore at all. I used to. Fuck me, did I used to, but I don't at all anymore. And I eat. And eating in this day and age, keeping yourself strong, focusing on building muscle, focusing on being strong, whatever that looks like for you. It doesn't have to look like lifting weights. It doesn't have to look like what I'm doing. It doesn't have to look like what anyone on Instagram is doing. It could be just whatever it looks like for you. It could look completely different for you. Cycling, get bicycle face, fuck them. It could look like walking up mountains. It could look like running. It could look like doing fucking pole. It doesn't have to look like lifting weights in the gym, but just keeping yourself fed and keeping yourself strong is a fucking revolution in this day and age when they are trying to keep us hungry. They are trying to lower our energy levels and they are trying to keep us skinny and tiny and hungry and weak. And also just feeding into it, this whole trend of goddamn Ozempic as well. We're not going to talk about that anyway, but I wanted to as well just say something else. I had something else here written down that I thought was really interesting. The thin woman body beauty standard. So this like tiny little frail woman, the beauty standard was invented after the Industrial Revolution because men wanted to flaunt their own wealth by having a wife that was too frail to work. So she was skinny and frail and weak and dainty and shivering. So obviously she wasn't working because look how skinny she was. So it was used as a way to like boost his ego so that he could prove how rich he was because his wife was so skinny that she obviously wasn't working at all. So I just wanted to put that in there because I think that's insane and mental that we're still, even though that's where the skinny body beauty standard came from, we're still feeding into it. Because males' egos wanted to prove, the men in back in the day in the Industrial Revolution wanted to prove how rich they were, so they would starve their wives or have their wives starve themselves or whatever to prove how rich they were. And we're still feeding into that by letting ourselves be manipulated and letting ourselves be programmed by these beauty standards and these fucking media trends or whatever into thinking that we need to be skinny. Oh my god, eat, please. Oh my god, please. It is a revolution to eat. It is a revolution to be strong. And I'm going to end the podcast here, otherwise I will keep talking forever. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to this. And I know there's no like massive conclusion, or there's probably no like massive lessons or anything in this. I just wanted to talk about the thinness trend and how it is just tied to obedience and how it is tied to subservience, how it is tied to just suppressing women. And I will not be participating. I will not be trying to make myself skinny. I will not be participating in Donald Trump's fucking Handmaid's Tale, whatever the fuck he's planning. I don't have to participate because I'm in Ireland anyway. My camera ran out of battery just as I was finishing off what I was trying to say, but I am going to leave the podcast here. Otherwise I will be talking for the next like 10 hours about this, but I just wanted to say that I understand if you are feeling the pressures to follow these trends of being very skinny, and I would just invite you to go really easy on yourself, and instead of focusing on trying to lose weight, focusing on nourishing yourself and focusing on being strong, whatever that means to you, because it means something different for everyone. And I know this is like a lifetime of unlearning and a lifetime of deprogramming ourselves, especially as women, to be skinny and to be tiny and to just be like quiet and submissive, and it's not going to change because of one TikTok. It's not going to change because of one episode. It's not like your lifetime of conditioning to be tiny is not going to change from just listening to me being like, just don't. Have you tried not doing that? That's not the answer, but it's a lifetime of work. And I would say now is more important than ever for women to be strong. Now is more important than ever for women to build physical strength, mental strength, emotional strength. Because especially, and again, especially what's going on in America, this doesn't apply to necessarily me because I'm in Ireland, but they're threatened by women. Women are getting powerful. Women are taking up too much space. We've got too many opportunities, and they want us at home having babies. There's nothing wrong with that either if that's what you want, but focus on strength. Let's just focus on strength, mental strength, physical strength, emotional strength, and keep yourself full. And just remember that keeping yourself full, listening to your body, it's a fucking resistance. It is a revolution in this day and age. So I'm going to leave the podcast there, and thank you so much for listening if you've made it this far. And,